All right. Before I begin, I just want to give a shout out to Sydney. She was the one who made those videos. So let's give her some more love and another applause. And there'll be another video later on too that she also pretty much shot and edited entirely herself. So I always got to give love to the media people. But as you guys saw from the video, my name is Brandon. I'm an intern pastor here at NCFC, and I also helped lead this team a little bit. And before, just to kick us off, just wanted to give a short, brief introduction of the team. Not too specific. As they come up and share the testimonies, you get to know them a little bit more, but just wanted to share a little bit about the team as a whole. But as you guys can hopefully see, we are a generally younger team, which I was very, very excited and grateful for, because this is actually my first mission trip where I wasn't the youngest. And so I was glad I could act a fool with my peers and, have a good time. But, with the younger team comes a lot of inexperience. Many of them, it was actually their first times on their mission trip. So Kayla, Samson, and Changi here, they're college students, and they sacrificed their winter break and a lot of their time, to come serve the Lord. So I was very grateful for them. But it was their first time here, and also Grace, or also referred to as Gek. It was also only her second time on a mission trip too. So, comes a lot of worries, comes a lot of doubts and fears. I'm not gonna lie, when we practiced our skit for the first time, I was like, whoo, we might be in trouble here, folks. But it was incredible to see how God just blew all those doubts and fears just out of the water and completely exceeded all of my expectations. And I was really humbled to see how God could use, what God can do with just a simple yes. And so, you guys will hear a lot about that as they share in their individual testimonies. And, as they share, I hope you guys can be reminded and remember, what we're here for. I hope as you hear these testimonies, they may not be just stories or, just good times to you guys, but I hope you guys can remember that these are the great things that God is doing all across the world. And I hope that, as you guys hear, and as you guys listen today, that you guys are encouraged, that you guys are challenged, and that you guys, that your hearts may be open to the ways in which God may be calling you here today. And that's what Missions Month is all about. And so we hope that, you may keep your hearts open to the Lord, from the youngest to the oldest. Let's not count ourselves out early. So, as a team shares today, hope you guys maybe have a good time being or hearing their stories, but also hope you guys are blessed and encouraged as well. So with that, I will introduce Sydney Grace up first, and she'll be giving the first portion of the missions report, which will basically explain all the ministry that we did out in the Philippines. So please welcome up Gek or Grace at this time. My bad, I think it was Sydney. I was right the first time. Oh, both together. My fault. I'm sorry.
Big room, so everybody gets a hello. Testing.
Hello, okay.
Hello,
this
hello,
one works.
hello.
Should we?
Hey, Kevin. Hello. If not, we're just going to keep going. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Sydney.
Okay,
hello,
there we go.
my name is Sydney. My name is Sydney.
My name is Grace.
And we're actually both members of our young adult ministry here called Ignite. So I'm one of the 12th grade co-teachers with Brandon.
And I'm a Discoveryland teacher here.
So we're both members who were able to go to the Philippines with this amazing team behind us. First, it was a huge blessing to really have been sent and see how God is working hundreds of miles away. So I'm so thankful to the congregation just for being able to physically send us off, support us financially through prayer and through time.
And like Brandon said, we'll be giving a recap of our time in the Philippines, starting with some information about the country, our travels, and what exactly we did there.
So on the next slide, please. Yeah, so I'm going to start us off with some background information about the Philippines. On our first day of missions training, the first thing we were told was that the Philippines is obviously an island nation, but how many islands exactly are there? So I'd like to ask the congregation to take a couple minutes to think about it while I'll show you some of our very serious attempts to guess on the next slide. So go ahead, take a minute, see if you think any of us are right, have a number in your head. If you want to silently guess, go ahead as I go to the next slide and reveal it. There are 7,641 islands in the Philippines. None of us were right. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see that 2,000 of them were occupied and actually inhabited, and 5,000 are unnamed. You'll hear later from our team today about how we were able to visit one of these islands, but we had some quite extensive travel to get there.
Yeah, so we flew around 10 hours to Istanbul, 11 hours to Manila, took a 2-hour domestic flight, then drove 2 hours to get to our final destination. And praise God, no one got sick, no motion sickness, and everyone was still in good health. And then here's a map of Samar Island and the city of Calbayog. Next slide, where CCAP is located, right there where it's circled. And each city is made up of villages called barangays, and every day of ministry we were able to visit a different one.
Yeah. So another thing important to know about the nation is that the Philippines is also one of the longest colonized countries in the world, with foreign rule from Spain for about 400 years. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see that there is a huge influence of Catholicism in the country. And while it says 9.5% other Christian, this number includes cults, so it's highly likely that the presence of Christianity is even smaller.
Okay, next slide. Okay, so next we want to introduce our hosting missionary and organization. Pastor Daniel was an NCFC member himself. He was called to go to missions, and he started as the director of CCAP since 1997. And what is CCAP exactly?
Great question, Grace. CCAP stands for Samar Integrated Community Advancement Project. So it actually serves as a further education after high school with first through fourth year students preparing for ministry, much like a Bible college. So whenever CCAP hosts missionaries, alumni also have the opportunity to volunteer their time as well. So we were blessed to work with not just students and alumni, but also the staff. The curriculum is quite intense. They, of course, study the Bible, but they also study languages and music. For the students to be focused, there are no cell phones on the weekdays. We were told 4:30 a.m. weekly prayer times. There is apparently a bell that is rung very, very hard at 4:30 in the morning to wake the campus up, but I'm pretty sure the team and I didn't hear anything because of how tired we were at night. Did you hear anything?
I heard nothing, no. But yeah, overall, this school is very small and with maybe around 20 students, and the rate of graduation is even smaller. An alumni had mentioned to us that he was only one of the 2 people in his graduating class. Pastor Daniel even mentioned that they have adopted the mantra, the few but the proud, and while the school is still growing, the students we met were devoted. And in fact, CCAP has over 160 alumni serving in various parts of the Philippines, either assisting existing churches or planting their own. A lot of the barangays we were able to visit were CCAP alumni or churches associated with them. Next slide.
Yeah, so I'll go over our ministry work here. As a team, basically our day started with morning devotionals and ended with nightly debriefs of the day. It was a really great way to start the day with worship, devotionals, and as a team, we were able to just prepare, get our hearts ready, and then tackle the day together. If you go to the next slide, I'll try to categorize what we did in buckets. We were able to visit local churches, present to the barangay officials of San Antonio Island, participate in door-to-door evangelism, and lead children's ministry. So.
And then I'll start with our experience with the local churches. We split up in 3 groups to go to 3 churches. Pastor Brian spoke at one, Brandon gave his first sermon at another, and Sydney shared her testimony at the 3rd church. So we were split by 3, as I said. PV, Changyu, and I went to CLC Church. Samson and Brandon went to Lior Church. Kayla and Sydney went to U-Turn for Christ. And then evangelism in San Antonio. Evangelism to San Antonio Island officials. So as soon as we got off the boat to San Antonio Island, we were told we were the first missionaries to ever step foot there. You can go to the next slide, I think. Yeah, there we go. And while we had originally planned for door-to-door an entire day, God gave us an opportunity to meet the head of the barangay. And we were spontaneously invited over to speak to every village official. Samson and Sydney gave testimonies. They were amazing testimonies. We were able to do a skit, and CCAP alumni helped us in translation. And one of the CCAP pastors, Pastor Roy, closed us in prayer. It was a pretty crazy experience.
Yeah, absolutely. If you go to our next slide, we were able to do something pretty classic short-term missions-like. It's door-to-door evangelism. So with the team split up in different pairs every day, we were assigned a translator and we went door-to-door to greet homes. In orientation, we were told that people are culturally Catholic, but usually they're non-practicing. So they will typically say yes when they are asked if they are Christian, but they see Catholicism and Christianity very much as the same. So Pastor Daniel told us that we are seen to the Filipinos as born-again Christians. And usually that phrase has a bit of stigma because while Catholicism is very wealthy, has very grand churches, born-again Christians in the Philippines typically have very small, modest church buildings, and they're often seen as poor. However, when pastors have guests, it's almost seen as a status symbol. It kind of like makes the pastors look better. They're, special enough to have guests, especially if they are from America. We were told that as Americans, we have particular assets that because the country we live in is often a goal for the local people to eventually immigrate here. We were also told that especially as Koreans, people will want to speak with us because Korean dramas and Korean music have such a chokehold on the nation. So, yeah, essentially as guests.
Yes, so it was nice to be Korean there. So as guests, we were encouraged to form relationships instead of feel pressure to convert people on the spot, giving our testimony, praying for the people, asking if they had assurance in heaven were emphasized. Pastor Daniel said that what was truly important was that after we leave for the local churches to be able to follow up with the homes we went to.
Yeah, if you go to our next slide, children's ministry is also a very essential part of missions. And in the previous days, we'd kind of split up into different teams. We kind of spread the team thin. But this was probably the easiest way to see the full team work together. For our team, Samson single-handedly took charge of crafts. Changyu organized and led the games. Grace and Brandon also led dances. Kayla took on a lot of public speaking, so taking on a lot of opportunities to kind of speak on behalf of the team, to share God's love. It was honestly incredible, especially for, like Brandon said, a lot of the first-timers to just have so much responsibility for their first time. But yeah, if you could go to our next slide, our final slide.
Sydney also did a lot. She didn't mention herself, but she did a lot too. For our final slide, we have a photo of NCFC with CCAP. It was a huge blessing to have been hosted by them and to have worked with them. We've really experienced firsthand what it means to be a part of God's family, regardless of what corner of the globe we live in. Later, one of our team members will be able to speak about that in detail. So, yeah.
So speaking of detail, I'll ask Kayla to tell us more about her experiences through the children's ministry we did.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kayla. Currently a second-year psychology and criminal justice double major at the University of Maryland College Park. I'm the oldest of 3 siblings. I'm the 6th grade Timothy teacher with my co-teacher Isaac. Yay! And I'm also the second funniest member of the Philippines missions team, second to PB. Okay, anyways, so coming to the Philippines, God forced me to face my greatest fear, which was the unexpected. Starting from our orientation, where we were taught what not to say, what not to do, what to do. I felt so on edge, constantly fearful that something I said could be hurtful or inconsiderate or offensive. And I'm already usually so on edge all the time about social situations for these exact reasons, but I was more so because of the cultural barriers that existed. So Sunday service was my greatest fear. Our team split up going to different churches, as Grace and Sydney shared, and which made me a lot more fearful of the numerous eyes that would just be on Sydney and I. And additionally, we had to do so much introducing, smiling, shaking hands, picture taking, hugging, socializing, and that consistently drained me throughout the entire morning that Sunday. By lunch, I was irritable and tired, only eating my food and not really talking, listening to every conversation. But we had very little time to rest before the children's ministry that afternoon in Barangay Gatgaran. So I prayed a prayer before the children's ministry worship, recognizing that I really could not get through that day without the strength of the Lord. If it were up to me, I'd just be moody the entire time, letting myself sit in how I felt, and even forcing every last drop of energy out of myself to get by. However, I knew that God knew my irritable heart, and I knew that God's loved and cherished children didn't deserve a fake or forced children's ministry. I prayed that God would just use me and give me the strength, because everything I do with my own strength most definitely would fall short. So I could feel myself realigning my purpose when dancing for children's ministry. There's something so interesting to me as a worship leader about the kind of posture of worship you have when you're dancing silly dances, and it's easy for us, now that we're older, to think of it as not that deep, but I feel that being able to worship so unhindered and undignified for the Lord with such a physical posture for worship was so groundbreaking for me. And this feeling of physical posture in service of the Lord continued when I volunteered to help out with games. I played helicopter with the kids, spinning in circles until I low-key almost passed out. Then, even though I practiced it so many times before, I finally understood a posture of true worship and gratitude throughout our skit. In kneeling and hearing the words, "Rid me of myself, I belong to you," from the song "Lead Me to the Cross," I felt God truly humbling me, reminding me that this wasn't about me or my difficulties or struggles, but about Him and how He can use me despite my weakness for the glory of His kingdom. So I belong to Him, and these children belong to Him, and I was only there to be a vessel for His love. When explaining the skit, which also got unexpectedly assigned to me that day, I truly felt so much joy in sharing the word of the Lord with the children. I asked them to recognize if they've ever made a mistake, and most hands went up. Even at that young age, these young children didn't have the pride I'd built up in my heart over the years. They admitted their sin. Then I spoke of how Jesus was perfect and He had sacrificed Himself for our imperfections. These children could have a personal relationship with Him if they only accepted Him, so that despite their sin or mistakes, they could have the comfort of knowing how loved they are by Jesus. I told the children to turn to their neighbors and tell them, "I love you because Jesus loved me first." And it seems so simple, but it is often what we forget in our busy, out-of-control lives. We forget that it isn't through our abilities to be perfect that we are saved, but through the perfect Son of our perfect God. And so serving children's ministry that day brought me back to when I was younger. It wasn't in my older years that I finally accepted Jesus or understood His love. I think that when I was younger, maybe elementary schoolish, was when I had truly accepted Jesus with the fullness of my heart. And serving children really brought me back to memories of when this walk of faith was filled with so much joy and so much fun before the growing pains made it difficult. I remember the joy I had in dancing, listening to all Sunday messages, taking them to heart, praying with my hands pressed together like this, which we don't do much of, but I think it's so cute, and being desperate to tell my friends about Jesus. The memories of the childlike faith I had when I was younger, being so clearly displayed in the faith of the children of the Philippines, tugged at my heart. I feel that God has been calling attention to how I should serve his children, the younger hearts still growing and so joyful for the Lord. I'm still reflecting on which capacity this calling is taking me, praying that God would guide me to understand how I may contribute to glorifying him. But currently, I'm so incredibly thankful for my current Sunday school class. Teaching sixth grade has not only expanded my capacity to love through how proud I am of the youngest of God's Timothy youth, but also taught me so much about how much joy there is in serving the Lord. My class, even though they can be crazy, amaze me through their walks of faith, willingness to ask questions, and courage to even stand up for retreat open mics. So I just pray that this church would be able to continue to keep me accountable for the commitments I've made to serving God rather than serving myself, and help me being brought to that childlike faith again and again. So I just wanted to share a Bible verse that I shared with my college Bible study group this past week from John 15:12, which is, "This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you." After all, this walk isn't done alone, but by so many more of God's children of all ages, from the youngest children's ministry child to the oldest person in this room, who are all a part of the family of God. And we are called to love as God has loved us. Thank you.
What can satisfy what only you can fill? The longing to be known again. Desperately I seek a cup that won't run dry. Fill me with your love again. Purify my heart, my one desire.
Hello, my name is Samson. I'm 19 years old and I'm the youngest member of the team. And this missions trip was a lot of firsts for me because never been on a missions trip before, never been out of the country before. So first international flight. So it was pretty intimidating for me for everything, yeah. So before missions even started, my greatest fear of the trip was ironically the actual missions aspect of it, being sharing the good news of Christ to others. I knew by signing up, I would eventually have to come across a time where I had to talk to people, which I know sounds crazy, but I just let that fact sit in the background as the trainings proceeded and everything got set into motion. I rarely mention much about my faith outside the church, and I've never even tried to directly share the gospel to other people either. So being tasked to go from door to door, telling people about Christ, was quite the monumental task for me. Besides the fact that I was doing something that I've never done before, the difference in cultural norms was also an obstacle for me. Here in the US, people won't even come to their doors if you knock, and they'll just tell you to go away through their Ring doorbell. Like, they won't even show their face. So hearing that I would have to go up to complete strangers' houses and tell them about Jesus, nothing but anxiety filled my head. Although I did have a testimony ready to share, I still feared the unfamiliarity of everything, and I didn't know how I would converse or communicate to such a foreign group of people. The time came around to really begin the mission, and we would be sent off to remote villages to go out and share. I thankfully had CCAP staff, village locals, and I had Grace with me for the first door-to-door. And yes, but however, I described the first house that I visited to be a less than ideal starting scenario. So along with Grace, there were 2 translators, a husband and wife, and their 2 kids, all shoved in a bamboo hut, like smaller than the stage. So it was pretty cramped in there. And additionally, it was pouring rain, the roof was leaking, one of the kids was crying, and the host barely understood English. So my first impressions of everything did not help my anxiety towards having to share. And not to blame Grace or anything, but as being the younger and less experienced member of the group, I didn't expect to be the first in sharing the testimonies. And I really would have loved to at least have something to reference off of, but instead I was just thrown right into the spotlight. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to introduce myself. I didn't know what topics were applicable or even appropriate. But in a leap of faith, I just shared the testimony that I had prepared and hoped for the best. At that moment, I didn't even need to read off of anything because the words were just internalized within me. And it all just came naturally. During translation, I did sense a few moments of miscommunication and confusion, but everything ended up being resolved, and the hosts were attentive and listening all throughout. As we concluded the conversation and moved on to the next house, a huge sigh of relief hit me as I had just accomplished the purpose of the mission. Although there are still plenty of houses that I had to stop by that day and throughout the week. Once the first house was done, it felt like a huge weight was lifted off my back, and talking and sharing with people became a lot easier. I couldn't describe it in any other way but an act of God that I was able to share in all the homes that I went to. I don't think I spoke a single word myself throughout the entire trip because it was all God that was speaking through me. Looking back, I still can't believe that I went from door to door to about a dozen houses, and I can only thank God for providing me with His words, Spirit, and this opportunity as a whole. Despite my fears and reluctance with doing door-to-doors and the additional highlights of the trip, like the food and the beaches, I'd still have to say that doing door-to-doors was the most memorable part of the trip for me. I wouldn't say that I would actively want to do door-to-doors, nor do I enjoy doing them in the moment, but the achievement in doing something that's hard, with God's assistance, of course, only puts a smile on my face. If there's one thing that I learned from this trip, it would be that in order to do truly difficult things, it requires a lot of effort and initiative, but God will meet you halfway and He will take care of the rest. Before, I already knew to trust in God no matter what, but in reality, it's a lot easier to say that than to actually live that out. I got to experience firsthand God working through me when I put 100% of my trust in Him. Missions really boxes you into a corner where there's literally no other option than to trust in God. Yes, it was stressful and it was difficult, but being able to witness God not just work through me, but through the entire team, far exceeds any fears and doubts that I had before. I hope my testimony could be an encouragement to anyone considering missions, or even just anyone on the fence of wanting to try something new. The vast unknown is daunting, but all it takes is a leap of faith, and God is there to catch you and carry you along.
My name is Changyu. I'm the teacher of 8th grade class over there. I'm really nervous to be up here to share with you my testimony. I'm supposed to share with you all about my experience on San Antonio Island. So first, I want to talk about some people I will reference later. The first person will be Pastor Marwin. He was one of the alumni at CCAP, and he was a really big help to the team throughout the entire trip. He actually made things really easy for us by helping the kids warm up to us at the villages we visited. And he would do this with fun activities and icebreakers and games that he would somehow think of on the spot. And, it was really a blessing to have him with us. He's overall a warm and outgoing guy. And he was actually the first person from CCAP that I had a conversation with. When we talked, he told me about how his father was part of the Philippines Army, and how when he and his siblings were younger, they would get into a lot of trouble, and then his father would discipline them as if they were little child soldiers. And he also told me about how his father was once the only person in his family who wasn't actually a follower of Christ, everybody but him. And this led to some conflict between the family. But eventually, after years of prayer and after Pastor Marwin just continuously prayed for him, his father finally conceded to the efforts of his family and decided to put his faith in God. And when I heard that story, I teared up. And I don't really like to cry in front of people, but I think I hit it pretty well when I did tear up. It was a touching story, and I was glad that Pastor Marwin was the first person that I had a conversation with. It made me feel ready for what we were to do on that island and what our job was. The next person I want to talk about is Pastor Chito. Chito as in the snack. His nickname is Chito, but his actual name is Cristito. But I guess Chito stuck. It felt like Pastor Chito was part of our NCFC mission team, and he was always ready with a witty remark or a quick joke. He was actually my translator for one of the days we did the door-to-door evangelism. Well, what surprised me from him was that he told me that when he heard my testimony, he thought that my testimony was very touching. And later that night, the day he told me that, he opened up to me by sharing some of his stories as well. He talked about his little brother and his other siblings, and he told me about stories, and he showed me how close he was with them, and he told me that I reminded him of his little brother. And yeah, he was very close to the siblings. Chito is also a really good guitar player. In the video, you might have seen someone playing the blue guitar with Kayla and Brandon on the cajon. And he can basically play any song based on just hearing the song. Yeah. And there was this one time when Chito and I were sitting on a small stage, which was also in the video. He would play these songs, and then I would have to guess what the name of the songs were. And one of the songs' name was "I the Tiger," which I couldn't get, and Sydney had to answer that for me. And then she looked at me disappointingly across the room as like, "Oh, I the Tiger, right? Yeah. No, I don't know I the Tiger." Yeah, so anyways, Pastor Marwin and Pastor Chito were two essential people to our trip, and they were people who we became closer with, and they were like brothers to us. So yeah, and now I want to share when I was given the task to share my testimony with the youth group ministry on the island. San Antonio Island. This was a very memorable experience for me since I was really nervous. I don't like speaking in front of a big group of people, and I'm also very uncomfortable with being vulnerable with people individually and even more so with lots of people. But before I had to share my testimony, I was really encouraged and blessed to witness another youth group ministry like our Timothy youth worshiping the Lord. They were enthusiastic and they were zealous for God, and they all worshiped together as one. And they were pouring out their hearts out with a worship team consisting of upperclassmen leading them. And it was really a blessing to see how no matter the location, there will always be a youth group, despite their age, worshiping. And after worship, Pastor Marwin led us in icebreakers as usual. And some of these icebreakers involved like a little dance we had to do with a stranger as a partner. And then we also played a winking number game. It was really complicated. I was really bad at it, but I think everyone forgave me. It was fun, and I felt more comfortable with this group of kids. And then it was time for me to share my testimony. And like I said before, I am uncomfortable with being vulnerable. I honestly felt that my testimony would be inappropriate for the occasion since everyone was happy and they were smiling, everyone was having a good time. And I know that my testimony beforehand, when we were doing door-to-door evangelism, it had made some people emotional when I was sharing it. So I was worried about ruining the mood. But it was my job to share, and I figured I might as well, right? And Pastor Cheeto was actually my translator for this too, so it was really reassuring to have him right next to me, like a brother right next to me translating for me. And I started sharing my testimony with Pastor Cheeto translating. I would say something, and then he would say something. Sometimes I would say something, but he wouldn't hear me, and then we'd have an awkward pause. It's like, what did you say? I said, and then it would be like that a little bit. But during those pauses that we had while he was translating for me, I realized I forgot what testimonies are meant for. Testimonies are stories of how God has impacted one's life, and one of many ways to love others by providing assurance and encouragement to those who listen. My testimony was never something to worry about, but instead it was an opportunity for me to love others by reassuring them that they are not alone in this world. I continued to share, and I saw that my audience was listening very carefully. They were even recording me too. I felt really awkward, but I managed to say everything I wanted to say, and then I was done with my testimony. And I just stood there for a few seconds, and I said, that's it. That's all my testimony. And I don't really remember how exactly it happened or what happened after that. But later, many of the kids wanted to take photos with me, so I think I didn't do a terrible job. And finally, the youth ministry that I shared with and the people we met in San Antonio, they had left like a really big impact on my heart, and it's made me realize that I want to go on more mission trips and to, spread the gospel to people all around the world. And so I hope to find a career that will help me to take advantage of that heart that I have now because of these people from Philippines. Thank you.
Don't worry, I'm not going to give a sermon this late, but I will have the worship team come up, and I'll just wrap up today. The couple testimonies we share, these are just small part of what we experienced, and yesterday we spent all day going through the debrief, and we're able to just identify all those significant moments and the lessons that we learned, and there's just so much. And one of the things that I encourage you to do is to keep asking them, reach out to them, buy them a coffee or meal, take them out for a meal, and really talk to them and get to hear the full story. Because, today I just assigned them to talk about one area of the ministry, but they have so many stories to tell because God has done amazing things in their lives in many aspects. I will just share quick 3 things, very quick, and then we'll end with the worship. For me, I think if I were to describe this trip in one word or a phrase, was breakout. I literally saw our members just break out of their shells. And I love that as a pastor, because at church, I don't get to see people being uncomfortable. Usually I'm the one talking to them, and I'm the one challenging them. But during the missions, I get to spend whole day with them. I get to hear how they're processing God's word from the morning, how they apply it throughout the day, how they struggle through all the challenges of food and difficult situations and stress. And it was a special moment for me, especially taking a young team with me, just knowing, kind of having a father's heart, even though I'm not that much older than them, although they say that I'm old. Oftentimes, I'll go to sleep early and then they'll stay up late night and have fun. And then I'll wake up early and then I'll wake them up. Except Changyu. Changyu is a military man, so he was always up early. But things like that really helped me to see that God was just opening them up, breaking out of who they were to become more like who God wanted them to be. And I said, this is what missions is all about. It's not so much we go there to convert people to Christianity we do that. We share the love of Christ. But I was able to witness each member breaking out of their shell in confidence and boldness, and sometimes reluctantly when I asked them to do stuff. But then once they got on the stage, man, God was just working so powerfully. One time, one of the members said, I didn't know my story could have such an impact. And I said, that's what you think. That's what you think. I just want to challenge all of you here. Your story matters. What God has done in your life, whether little or big, those things matter because God has done something very special in your life. When you start to tell those stories, not just in the Philippines, but even here with your friends, as we go through this missions month, that is my challenge to all of you, to perhaps break out of your shell, to be willing to be uncomfortable. And I want to do that as your pastor. My job is not to make you comfortable, to make you just go into heaven, arms crossed, in a nice car. If that's my job, I would quit today. My job as a pastor, my role as a pastor, as your shepherd, is to sometimes care for you, but also to put you out there so you can experience God firsthand, so that you don't just hear about what God is doing. Just like this, tomorrow, next year, in the summer, this could be your story. This could be your story, Timothy. No matter how young you are, no matter how old you are, we will continue to have opportunities, because that's something God spoke to me through this trip. This calling of being a missionary does not stop here with one short-term missions. And that was a theme across our devotionals. As we were reading through Bible Project, as we were reading through Moses, how he was called, as we were reading through Joseph's life, how he struggled through understanding God's calling in his life, I witnessed God speaking to them personally. So I challenge you to keep them accountable. Kayla talked about children's ministry. Changyu talked about perhaps God is calling me into something special. They're going to have to continue to pray. They're going to have to continue to wrestle with God to get some clarity from that. But I thank God for the church that you allowed this to happen. You supported them financially. You supported them through your prayers. And we felt it every day. Right before we left, our forecast was rain, 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 rain. Did you know? Not a single day. Every time we stepped out to the ministry, sunny. Even though the forecast said rain, God held back the rain so we could do the ministry. First day, it rained when we were on our way there. As soon as we stepped out to the ministry, stopped. As soon as we were done to go have lunch, pouring rain. I mean, how else would you explain other than what Samson said, act of God? And I think all these favors that we experienced was because of your prayers, your support. We had people fasting for us. I hope you did. We have people praying for us, so I thank the church. So the last thing that I want to share is this. You can either send, you can go, or you can disobey. Remember what I said last week? You only have 3 options. You can send, you can go, or you can disobey the mission of God. And I have an opportunity for you, as I promised last week. Can I see the slide? This summer, we're going to send the vision team, what I call, to Izamal, Mexico. Some of us here sitting here, we've been there. But we're trying to re-engage this concept of family missions. And we're going to do VBS and English teaching, and we'll do various local church ministries. I want you to pray about it. Not everyone's going to go, but I believe we're going to be very selective because so many people will want to go. I think Missions Committee has a job to do to really interview and make sure we send the right people. But I encourage you, it's Mexico missions. If God is calling you to Mexico this summer and you just want to find out more about it, I have the information sheet with me. Come talk to me after service. And next year, wintertime, we'll probably send the team again. Just continue to pray. Because I told the team, if you guys want to come back, guess what? You need to start planning now. You need to make sure you don't schedule anything during that time. Next January, around the same time, we'll probably send the team. So just continue to pray about it. Whether you go, whether you send. I hope those 2 are the only options that we choose as NCFC members. I hope no one here would outright disobey God and say, I don't want to participate in this mission. So with that, let's all stand. Let's sing this song together. Christ be magnified. That is our desire, as I told you last week. Our mission on earth is to know Him and to make Him known. And as we sing this song to wrap up today's service, let's just pray that Christ will be known all over the earth, especially in the parts where the gospel is not known. So let's sing this song together.